The forbidden store. David stood still in front of the black door. It was bigger than he had imagined. It was taller than 3 men and wider than a house. The surface was smooth and cold, made of some strange metal. No one could name out. No one really knew who built it. Some said aliens made it long before humans came to this planet. Some said it was a trap. But everyone agreed on one thing. No one who went inside ever came back. Behind him, the wind howled through the empty colony streets. Riven was a dying planet now. The oxygen generators were failing, crops were dead, and people were sick. If no one found a solution soon, everyone would be gone in a few months. David closed his eyes and took a slow breath. He thought of his little sister Emma, lying in the clinic. She was only 10, coughing and weak. He thought of his mother, too tired to even cry anymore. This was why he was here. People before him had tried to open the door. They were soldiers, scientists, and explorers. But none of them returned. Some screamed as they crossed the threshold. Some just vanished without a sound. David knew the stories. He heard them all as a boy. But he also knew this was their last chance. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. He clenched them into fists. "I have to do this," he whispered to himself. He reached out and touched the door dot. It was colder than ice. The surface seemed to pull at him, like it was alive. Strange black symbols glowed faintly under his fingers, shifting as if they were watching him. The air grew heavy. He felt something, like a heartbeat, coming from the door itself. He stepped back for a moment, his chest tight with fear. His instincts screamed at him to run. But then he thought of Emma again, and the fear became something else, determination. He placed both hands on the door and pushed Dot at first. Nothing happened. Then a deep sound filled the air, a low hum, like the sound of a storm far away. The door began to glow, lines of light crawling across its surface like veins. With a loud click, it started to open, slowly, painfully, revealing a thin crack of darkness. David swallowed hard. The darkness inside was thicker than night, and colder. It felt wrong, like something ancient and dangerous was waiting just beyond the crack. A strange smell reached him, metallic, like blood and dust. Grew louder, and he thought he heard whispers, faint, soft, and coming from inside. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then he heard it clearly. David, his name. His blood ran cold. He stumbled back, his heart pounding. He looked around. The streets behind him were empty. No one was there. The whispers came again, closer this time. "David, come." He stared into the dark opening. For a moment, he saw something move inside, a shadow, tall and thin, sliding away before he could see clearly. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to turn and run. But his mind was already made up. He took one step forward. The ground under him felt strange, soft, and hard at the same time, as if the world itself didn't want him to go further. The air grew colder. His breath came out in white clouds now. The whispers continued, a chorus of voices, some angry, some sad. "You should not be here. Turn back." Too late. He ignored them. Another step. His hands brushed the edge of the door. The metal was alive under his fingers, pulsing like it had veins and blood. He pushed the door open, just wide enough to slip through. Inside, it was completely dark. But the floor glowed faintly, a line of blue light stretching forward into the unknown. He took another step inside, and the door began to close behind him, slowly but surely. The whispers grew louder now, filling his head, his ears, his heart. "Why do you come? You know what happened to the others." David stopped and looked back. The crack of light from the outside world was shrinking fast. He could still turn back now. He could leave and pretend this never happened. But he shook his head. "No," he said, his voice low but steady. "I know what happened to them, but I have to try. For them. For all of us." He stepped forward again, deeper, into the darkness. The door closed behind him with a loud, echoing thud dot, and the whispers. Began to laugh the whispering hall. The door shut behind David with a sound like thunder. For a long moment, he stood there in the dark, his hands still raised, as if trying to hold on to the last bit of light. But the light was gone now. There was only blackness and the faint blue line of light on the floor, stretching forward into the unknown. David swallowed hard. The air inside was colder than before, so cold it hurt to breathe. It smelled strange, too, a sharp metallic scent mixed with dust and something else he couldn't name. He took a careful step forward. The floor was smooth, almost soft under his boots, yet he could feel a faint vibration through it, as if something alive was moving far below Dot. Then the whispers began again. Dot at first. They were faint, little more than a breeze brushing against his ears. But soon they grew louder, clearer, and more voices joined in. Human. "Why do you come? You don't belong here." David froze. The voices didn't seem to come from anywhere. They were not behind him, or in front, or above. They were everywhere. Inside his head, in his chest, in his very bones. Turn back. Too late now. Like the others. David clenched his jaw and forced himself to take another step forward. "I'm not turning back," he muttered under his breath, though his voice sounded small in the vast, empty hall. Dot, as he walked, the darkness shifted. The faint blue light on the floor grew brighter, revealing strange walls on either side of him. He stopped and stared. The walls were covered in symbols, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, glowing softly as if lit from inside. They moved. The symbols didn't stay still, but twisted and crawled like living things, forming patterns he didn't understand. Some looked like eyes, some like mouths, some like hands reaching out to grab him. "You don't see. You don't. No? You will." David looked closer at one of the symbols. It looked like a circle of sharp teeth, and as he watched, it slowly opened and closed like it was breathing. He stepped back quickly. That's when he noticed the shadows. They were faint at first, just darker patches in the air, drifting across the walls and floor. But as he watched, they grew sharper, taller, and began to take shape. Figures, human figures. David froze as they stepped out of the walls, silent and slow. They were thin, almost skeletal, their faces pale and hollow. Their eyes glowed faint white, and their mouths hung open as if they were still screaming. The whispers grew louder now. "We warned you. We came before. We never left." David realized who they were. The others. The ones who came through the door and never returned. He backed away as one of them reached out a bony hand toward him. Its fingers were long, black at the tips, and cold mist drifted from its skin. "No," David said, shaking his head. "I'm not like you. I won't fail." The figure stopped, its head tilting slightly, as though curious. Then, slowly, it lowered its hand and pointed down the hall. David turned to look where it was pointing. Far ahead, at the very end of the blue-lit path, there was something glowing faintly in the dark, a sphere of light. Floating in the air. The whispers fell silent. The shadows stopped moving. The hall became still and quiet. David could hear his own breathing again, fast and uneven. His hands were clammy, his legs shook, but his eyes stayed fixed on the glowing sphere. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Shadows didn't stop him. They just watched, their white eyes following him as he passed. He kept walking, though every step felt heavier than the last. The cold grew worse. The air felt thicker, Like walking through water, the whispers came back. But now they were softer, more urgent. You will see. You will know. You cannot turn back. When David finally reached the sphere, he stopped Dotted. Hovered in front of him, bright and strange, casting long shadows on the walls. It was perfectly smooth, yet patterns of light swirled deep inside it. Like galaxies spinning in miniature. David reached out a hand. The sphere pulsed, and a shock of heat ran up his arm. He gasped, but didn't pull away. He could feel it. Now, a presence inside the sphere, awake and waiting. Then the whispers spoke together, louder than ever before, and for the first time they formed a clear sentence. Prove yourself. David frowned. Prove myself? How? He asked aloud. The sphere pulsed again, brighter now. The walls around him began to shake. The symbols writhed violently. The shadows screamed and scattered into the dark. The floor beneath his feet cracked open. And David fell to his knees. A voice, deep and ancient, boomed from the sphere. Not a whisper this time, but a roar that filled the hall. If you wish to save your kind, face the test. Before he could answer, the light from the sphere shot out, blinding him. He raised his arms to shield his eyes, but the ground beneath him vanished. He was falling. Down, down into darkness. And the whispers followed him as he fell. The test begins. The test. David fell for what felt like hours. The air rushed past him, icy and sharp. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The darkness around him was alive. Shadows twisted and curled, some reaching for him with clawed hands before vanishing. Again. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. He was standing, breathing. His feet were on solid ground again. David looked around. He was no longer in the whispering hall. This place was different. It was a vast, endless plain under a sky of swirling gray clouds. No walls, no ceiling, no sound except the faint hum of the ground beneath his boots. Far ahead of him, in the distance, something glowed faintly, like the sphere from before. David took a slow breath. Is this the test? He said aloud. The air shimmered. A voice answered, deep and cold. Yes. David stiffened. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, so loud it rattled his chest. Prove yourself, survive, endure, or be forgotten. Like the others. David's jaw tightened. I'm not like them, he said firmly. The voice laughed, a sound that shook the ground under his feet. We will see. Suddenly, the world around him shifted. The ground cracked. The air grew. Hot, heavy. A figure appeared ahead of him, a human figure. But as it stepped closer, David realized it wasn't alive. Its skin was gray and cracked, its eyes empty, its face twisted in pain. It wore a tattered uniform, a soldier. One of the others. You can't win. It hissed, its voice dry and hollow. You will fail? It lunged at him. David barely had time to react. He stumbled back as the creature swung at him with unnatural speed. He ducked, rolled to the side, and scrambled to his feet. I won't fail, he growled, clenching his fists. Not like you. He swung his fist and struck the creature in the chest. To his surprise, it shattered like glass, breaking into 1,000 shards of black mist. The mist rose into the air, then reformed into another figure, this one taller, darker, with 2 burning white eyes. You can't save them. It whispered. You are alone. David shook his head. No, I'm not alone. They're waiting for me. I'll save them. No matter what. The figure raised a long black blade and charged. David dodged left, then right, the blade barely missing him. He felt heat on his skin where it passed, like fire. But he kept moving, kept fighting. Every time he struck one of the shadows, It shattered and reformed into something worse. They kept coming. More and more. A wall of figures with glowing eyes, whispering his name, calling him to give up. David fell to one knee, panting. His arms ached. His legs felt like stone. The voice boomed again, louder this time. You are weak. You are human, fragile, hopeless. You cannot pass. David looked up, his eyes fierce despite the sweat and blood on his face. I know, he shouted. I am human, but that's why I'll win. We don't quit. We fight. The ground shook violently, cracks spreading under him like spider webs. Then the air shimmered, and everything froze. The figures stopped moving. The sky turned pitch black, and in front of him stood a massive shape, something impossible. It was neither man nor beast, but both. Taller than a building, its body made of smoke and stars, its eyes like twin suns. It leaned down, staring at him. Then show us, it said. Show us your will. The ground beneath David began to collapse, and he fell again. But this time, he landed in a completely different place. Now, he was standing in what looked like the ruins of Earth. The sky was red. Fires burned all around. He saw the colony, his people, lying on the ground, motionless, his mother, his sister, Emma. David ran to Emma, fell to his knees, and shook her. Emma, wake up, he cried. Her little eyes opened, full of pain. You failed, she whispered before turning to dust in his hands. David's heart pounded. No, this isn't real, he muttered, clenching his fists. This is just another trick. The voice came again, softer now, almost curious, even when shown your failure? You keep going? David stood up, his hands trembling but steady. Yes, because even if I fail here, out there, they still need me. And I won't stop until I've saved them, even if I die trying. The sky split open above him. Blinding light poured down, burning away the ruins, the shadows, the voices. The great figure reappeared, towering over him, its many eyes blinking slowly. Then you may continue. The ground beneath him cracked and opened into light. David felt himself being lifted up, higher and higher, the whispers growing fainter behind him. As he rose, the voice spoke one last time. Remember, human, the test is not over. You have only just begun. And the world went white. David gasped and fell forward, landing hard on smooth ground. He opened his eyes. He was back in the whispering hall. But now, the sphere in front of him glowed brighter, alive with swirling colors and strange patterns. David got to his feet slowly. His body ached all over, but his eyes burned with determination. He reached out and touched the sphere. It pulsed warmly under his fingers. The whispers returned, soft and almost respectful this time. You have passed the first trial. David smiled faintly, despite the pain in his chest. Good, he said, because I'm not done yet. And as the sphere began to open, revealing something even stranger inside, David stepped closer, ready for whatever came next. Asterisk. The map of stars. David stood still as the sphere before him cracked open. Thin beams of golden light spilled out, cutting through the heavy darkness of the whispering hall. The air around him shimmered and buzzed with energy, making the hair on his arms stand on end. Inside the sphere was something unlike anything he had seen before, a floating map made of stars and light, suspended in the air like a galaxy trapped in glass. The whispers returned, low and insistent. The path, the stars, the home you seek. David stared. The map, tiny points of light, stars, planets, swirled and shifted. They formed shapes and trails he didn't understand, yet somehow, deep inside, he felt. He knew what it meant. He reached out carefully, and as his fingers touched the edge of the map, It flared brighter. Images flashed through his mind. Worlds covered in oceans, mountains of ice, strange green skies. And then a planet, blue and gold, glowing softly, as if waiting for him. David gasped. "That's it," he whispered. "Our new home." But then the whispers grew louder, angrier. "Not so simple. You are not alone. The Guardian watches." David blinked. "The Guardian?" he asked. The sphere began to spin wildly, and the lights in the map shifted. The golden planet faded, replaced by a dark shape. A massive black figure, hidden in shadow, with countless glowing eyes and sharp, jagged limbs stretching out like a spider across the stars. It filled the map, covering everything, blocking the path. The Guardian of the Stars? It waits. It does not forgive. David's chest tightened. He couldn't look away. The shape was terrifying, not just in its size, but in how it felt. It was alive. And it hated him. The whispers turned into one clear voice, cold, ancient, and full of contempt. "You dare!" David flinched as the entire hall shook violently. The walls cracked. The glowing symbols burned red. Shadows poured from every corner, rushing toward him like a wave. He stumbled back as the black figure inside the map stretched outward, its claws scraping against the stars. One by one, the tiny lights winked out under its touch. "You cannot pass. You cannot survive. Turn back." David set his jaw and stood tall, though his knees trembled. "No," he said. "I won't turn back. We deserve a chance. And I'll fight you if I have to." The hall exploded with sound, a roar so loud it felt like it could tear the planet apart. The dark shape inside the map lunged forward. The light around David shattered like glass. And suddenly, he wasn't in the hall anymore. He found himself standing in space. No floor, no air, no ground. Just an endless field of stars below his feet and blackness above. And ahead of him, it stood. The Guardian. Now he could see it fully. It was as big as a moon, its body made of black steel and writhing. Smoke. Its many eyes glowed like cold fire. Its limbs stretched outward endlessly, sharp and cruel, scraping against the stars themselves. And it spoke, but not with a whisper this time. Human, small, weak, unworthy. David took a step forward, though every part of him screamed to run. "I'm here," he called out, his voice shaking but steady. "I came for my people. I won't leave without the path." The Guardian tilted its head. "Then come and be judged." A blinding beam of black light shot toward him. David barely jumped to the side in time, feeling the air crackle and burn where the beam passed. Another came, faster. He rolled forward, barely avoiding it again. The Guardian's claws swept at him, ripping holes in the very space around him. David gasped for breath. It was too fast, too strong. How was he supposed to fight something like this? But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw them, faint figures in the stars around him, the others, the ones who came before, watching. And one of them, a woman with long white hair, whispered faintly, "Its heart." David froze. He looked closer. At the center of the Guardian's massive body, just beneath its armor of shadows, there was a faint glow, small, hidden, but there. Its heart. David narrowed his eyes. "That's it," he muttered. He sprinted forward, dodging. Another beam of light, rolling between two sweeping claws. The Guardian roared in fury, but he kept running, faster and faster, until the glow was just ahead. But just as he reached for it, one of the Guardian's claws struck him square in the chest. David was thrown backward, spinning into the void. Pain exploded through his body. He struggled to breathe, clutching his side. The Guardian loomed over him, its voice thundering. You are nothing. Your kind ends here. David gritted his teeth, forcing himself to his feet. No, he spat. We are human, and we never stop. He lunged forward one final time. Every shadow claw tried to stop him. Every beam of light screamed past him, but he didn't stop. With a roar of his own, he reached the glowing heart and slammed his hand against it. The world exploded in light. When the light faded, David was back in the whispering hall. The sphere now floated quietly before him, the map inside whole again. But this time, the dark shape of the guardian was gone. The whispers were soft, almost. Proud, you faced it. You endured. The path is open. David sank to his knees, gasping. His chest burned, his hands shook, but he smiled faintly. The map inside the sphere glowed brighter now, the golden planet at its center shining like a beacon. David stood up slowly, looking at it. All right, he whispered. I found the way. Now let's go home. And as he touched the sphere, the map unfolded completely, and the stars began to move. Asterisk, asterisk, the guardian awakes. The stars began to move. David stood in the whispering hall, watching as the glowing map inside the sphere unfolded fully. Lines of golden light stretched between the stars, forming a path to the hidden planet, humanity's new home. The whispers around him fell silent, replaced by a deep and steady hum that filled the air. He reached out and touched the map. The golden planet pulsed warmly, and in his mind he saw it clearly. Blue oceans, green hills, a sky lit by twin suns. It felt alive. Waiting. David let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He had done it. He had passed the test. He had found a way. But then a faint chill ran down his spine. The golden planet dimmed slightly, and the map began to shake. Dark cracks appeared across its surface, and the whispers returned, louder, sharper, full of fear. It wakes. The guardian still watches. Not finished. David backed away as the sphere flared with harsh white light. The glowing lines of the map shattered like glass, and a roar, deep, ancient, furious, filled the hall. The walls cracked. The symbols on them bled red light. The ground shook violently, throwing David to his knees. No, he muttered, pushing himself back up. I defeated it. I passed the test. But the voice that answered was not the same cold whisper as before. It was bigger, stronger, angrier. You escaped judgment, but the stars are still mine. The air split open in front of him. Black claws tore through the darkness, and two enormous white eyes glowed in the crack. The guardian. Awake now. Fully awake. David stumbled back as the dark figure began to drag itself into the hall. Its massive body filled the space, crushing walls and tearing the symbols off the stone. It roared, and the floor beneath David's feet fractured like ice. You cannot take what does not belong to you. David clenched his fists. I will, he said through gritted teeth, even if I have to tear you apart again. But the guardian laughed, a sound that shook the hall so hard that pieces of the ceiling began to fall. You are no longer in my shadow. Now you are in my sight. And the world exploded in black light. When David opened his eyes, he was no longer in the hall. He was on a ship. His ship, the Endeavor, the colony's last starship, floated in the void, surrounded by stars. But the stars didn't look the same anymore. They were dim, cold, and wrong. David stood on the command deck, his hands gripping the railing. Below him, engineers rushed between consoles, alarms blaring. Red lights flashed overhead. The captain, a tall woman with gray streaks in her hair, turned to him, her eyes wide with panic. David, what happened? She demanded. You said the path was clear. David looked out through the glass. at the blackness ahead, and there it was, the Guardian, larger now than anything he'd seen before. Its vast limbs stretched across space itself. It hung in front of the hidden star system like a living wall of darkness, its many eyes blazing like dying suns, and it was awake. The crew fell silent as the Guardian moved, slowly, like a mountain coming alive. Its voice rumbled through the ship, bypassing every wall, every barrier, and settling directly into their minds. You should have stayed, human. This place is not for you. Turn back or be ended. David straightened, though his heart pounded in his chest. No, he said softly, but firmly. We came this far. We're not turning back now. The Guardian's eyes narrowed. Then you will burn. In an instant, the creature lunged forward. Black tendrils of energy lashed out, tearing through the void toward the ship. The Endeavor shook violently as alarms screamed. Panels sparked, and people screamed as systems failed one by one. Shields failing, someone shouted. Hull breach on deck 4. Another cried. David gripped the console and shouted over the chaos. Divert all power to engines. Get us. Moving, head straight for the planet. The captain stared at him like he was insane. That thing will tear us apart before we even get halfway. David turned to her, his eyes hard. Trust me. There's a way through. I've seen it. The captain hesitated, then nodded sharply. Do it. The engines roared to life, and the ship surged forward, straight toward the Guardian. The creature roared back, its many arms striking down like lightning. The ship rolled and twisted, narrowly avoiding each blow. David ran to the helm, shouting. Instructions. Bank left. Dive now. Up 30 degrees? Now. The Guardian's claws tore through space just behind them, but they slipped through each gap, each opening. David could feel it. The path he saw in the map was still there, hidden among the shadows. But the closer they got to the planet, the angrier the Guardian became. It opened its mouth, a vast, black maw filled with stars, and began to draw the ship toward it, engines at full. Don't stop. David roared. The hull groaned and creaked under the strain. The crew clung to whatever they could as the ship shook violently. One of the outer decks snapped away, spinning into the void. David's knuckles turned white on the helm. He closed his eyes, feeling the map in his mind, and whispered to himself, There's the opening. He slammed the controls hard to the right. The ship spun, narrowly dodging another claw. For a moment, they were directly beneath the Guardian, its body stretching endlessly above them, its many eyes blazing down with pure hate. Then David saw it, the heart, just as before, hidden deep. Within its chest, glowing faintly behind its armor, David's eyes widened. That's it, he breathed. That's the way through. He turned to the captain. Target the heart. Fire everything we've got, now. The captain didn't hesitate. All batteries, fire on my mark. Mark. The ship's weapons flared, and streams of golden energy slammed into the Guardian's chest. It screamed, a sound that tore through the stars, and its body writhed in pain. For the first time, it pulled back. David grinned grimly. Full speed. Now. The ship surged forward, straight through the gap in its armor, past the flailing limbs, and out the other side. Stars ahead brightened. And there it was, the hidden planet. Blue and gold, shining like a jewel. Waiting for them. Behind them, the Guardian roared one last time. This is not over. Then it faded into the dark, retreating, its many eyes still watching. David fell back against the railing, his chest heaving. The crew cheered around him. The captain put a hand on his shoulder and said quietly, You were right. David stared at the glowing planet ahead and murmured, No, not yet. But we're getting close. And the ship sailed onward, toward their new home and whatever came next. The last stand, the ship sailed closer to the planet. Through the great glass of the command deck, David stared at it, a world of gold and blue, wrapped in clouds like silk. It looked alive, glowing softly as if it welcomed them. But even from here, he could see the damage. Black scars spread across the upper atmosphere, faint cracks in the sky, as though something huge had tried to crush the planet and failed. Flashes of light burned now and then in the distance, like storms or battles that never ended. Behind them, the void was silent. The Guardian had fallen back into the shadows, but David knew it wasn't gone. It was waiting. Watching. The whispers. In his mind confirmed it. The heart still beats. The stars still burn. One final breath. The captain stood beside him, her face pale but determined. "The crew is ready," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed the fear beneath. "They're calling this our last jump. Win or lose, it ends here." David nodded, still, staring at the planet. "It ends here," he agreed softly. The Endeavor entered the planet's atmosphere, and the world lit up around them. Winds screamed across the hull. Flames licked the edges of the ship as they plunged through thick golden clouds. Below, mountains of black stone jutted up from oceans of silver water. Fields of strange glowing plants spread across valleys, and giant creatures moved through. The mist, their shapes too massive to fully see. It was beautiful and terrifying, but there was no time to admire it. As the ship passed over a massive canyon, the whispers struck again, louder, sharper, and filled with rage. "You dare! You bring them here! You will not leave alive!" The crew screamed and clutched their heads as the ship's systems flared. Panels shattered. Engines sputtered. Sparks rained down. David gritted his teeth and shouted over the chaos. "Hold course! Get us to the surface! Don't stop!" The captain nodded and barked orders. The ship groaned and buckled, as if the planet itself was trying to push them away. Then it came, the Guardian. From the black clouds above, it descended, larger than ever before. Its vast limbs tore through the air, ripping apart the clouds and darkening the sky. Its eyes, countless and blazing, burned through the mist. Its voice shook the mountains. "You will not take what is mine. Your kind ends here." David grabbed the railing and stared up at it. The crew around him fell silent, their faces white with terror. The Guardian's claws slammed into the mountains around them, sending boulders tumbling into the canyon. Winds howled like 1,000 screams. The silver ocean below churned and rose in waves, taller than skyscrapers. David took a breath and shouted, "We knew you'd come, and we're ready for you." The Guardian tilted its enormous head. "Ready?" Its laugh, low and cold, rolled across the world. David turned to the captain and said, "Prepare the core." "It's time." Her eyes widened. "You're really going to?" "Yes," David interrupted. "We'll use the core. We'll end this for good." The captain hesitated and nodded sharply. "Core charging." 10 minutes. The ship shot through the canyon, weaving between jagged peaks and collapsing cliffs as the Guardian's claws raked the ground behind them. David moved through the ship, helping where he could, pulling crew members to their feet, rerouting. Power sealing hull breaches. The whispers tried to break him, screaming in his mind, "You will fail. You are nothing. You cannot kill the stars." But he didn't listen. When he reached the weapons bay, the engineer handed him a control panel. "The core's ready," she said, her hands shaking. "You just have to get close enough to detonate it." David nodded, his jaw tight. "I'll get close enough." The ship climbed out of the canyon and soared toward the open plain at the planet's heart, a vast circle of black stone It seemed to pulse with faint light. The Guardian was already there, waiting, its enormous body crouched like a spider, its claws buried in the ground, its endless eyes blazing. The air around, it shimmered and burned. The land cracked under its weight. David stood at the front of the ship, watching it. He could feel its hatred, like fire pressing against his skin. The whispers came one last time. You cannot destroy me. You will break. You will beg. David closed his eyes, clutching the detonator in his hands. No, he whispered. You'll beg. And then he ran. The ship plummeted toward the Guardian at full speed. The creature's limbs swung wildly, striking the ground, the mountains, the air, anything to swat them away. David dashed to the airlock as the hull cracked and alarm screamed. He slammed the button, and the door hissed open. Wind roared around. Him pulling at his clothes, his hair, his breath. Below him, the Guardian loomed, closer and closer. David leapt. He fell through the air, fire streaking behind him, the detonator gripped tightly in his hand. The Guardian rose to meet him, its massive claws reaching up, its mouth opening into a black void. David spun mid-air, dodging one claw, then another. The ground below rushed up to meet and got at the last moment. He slammed into the creature's chest, right where its heart glowed faintly through its armor. The impact knocked the breath out of him, but he didn't let go. He clawed his way toward the heart, slamming his fist against the black glass that covered it. The Guardian screamed, a sound so loud the ground split. The mountains shook, and the air caught fire. Its claws came down to tear him apart, but he was already there. He pressed the detonator against the heart, and he said softly but clearly, "For them." Then he pressed the button. The world exploded. A wave of golden light erupted. From the Guardian's chest, tearing through its body and sending shockwaves across the planet. Its claws shattered. Its eyes went dark. Its roar faded into silence. David was thrown backward, landing hard on the black stone below. He lay there, gasping, staring up at the sky as the creature collapsed, its enormous body falling into the ground, crumbling into dust dot above him. The clouds parted. Sunlight, warm and bright, poured down on the land for the first time in ages. The captain's voice crackled over his earpiece. "David, the Guardian is gone. The planet. It's ours." David smiled faintly, though his whole body ached. He looked at the blue sky and whispered, "Not just ours. Everyone's." And as he closed his eyes, the whispers in his mind faded into silence, finally quiet. The new dawn when David opened his eyes. The sky was no longer dark, but it was blue. Not just any blue, but a deep, pure blue, alive with streaks of golden light from the rising twin suns. Warmth touched his skin. A soft wind brushed his face, carrying the scent of something sweet and alive. For the first time in a long time, the world felt real. And quiet. The Guardian was gone. David sat up slowly, his whole body aching. He was lying on smooth black stone, the remains of the battlefield. Around him, faint golden cracks glowed where the Guardian's body had crumbled. As if the ground itself was healing Got in the distance, the Endeavor rested gently on the plains, smoke rising from its battered hull. But it was intact and alive. David let out a long, shaky breath. They had made it, somehow. They had won. Minutes later, he stood at the edge of the plains, watching as the crew emerged from the ship. At first, no one spoke. They just stood there, staring at the sky, at the land, at the great quiet after so much chaos. Then, someone started to laugh. It was small, at first nervous, uncertain, but it grew. Others joined in. Laughter, cheers, tears. People hugged each other, fell to their knees, raised their arms to the sky. The captain walked over to David. Her face was streaked with dust and tears, but she smiled as she said, "You did it. We all did it. This place, it's ours now." David shook his head faintly. "It was never about taking it," he said softly. "It was about earning it." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. For the next hour, the crew began to set. Up camp, tents rose, scanners hummed. The air was filled with voices again, tired but hopeful. David wandered a little away from them, to the edge of a small rise overlooking the plains. From here, he could see the planet in all its glory. Rivers winding through fields of glowing grass, mountains crowned with white clouds, forests of strange trees with leaves that shimmered like glass dot, and in the far distance, what looked like ancient ruins, black towers half buried in the hills, silent and mysterious. He could still feel it, the faint heartbeat of the planet under his boots. But it no longer felt hostile. It felt welcoming. Then, as he stood there, the whispers returned. But they weren't sharp or angry anymore. They were soft, gentle, almost kind. You endured. You faced what others could not. You are human. David's hands tightened at his sides. And you? He whispered, "Are you still here?" The ground shimmered faintly in front of him, and for a moment he thought he saw it, the shadow of the Guardian, smaller now, faint as smoke. Its many eyes glowed dimly, watching him, but instead of rage, its voice was quiet. "We remember. You are not like the others. You are worthy." David took a slow breath. "Then let us stay. Let us live here. We've lost enough." The shadow tilted its head, then slowly faded, leaving only the wind and the quiet hum of the land. The whispers faded completely, and David felt, for the first time, truly at peace. When he returned to the camp, the captain called everyone too. "Gather." Together, they stood in a circle, looking at one another, bruised, exhausted, but alive. The captain looked at David and gave him a small nod. He stepped forward and spoke. "This is it," he began, his voice steady but soft. "This world is ours now. Not because we claimed it, but because we proved we deserved it." He paused, looking around at the tired, hopeful faces. We faced what was waiting in the dark. We stood when others ran. We fought, not just for ourselves, but for all those who couldn't. He thought of Emma, his little sister, and felt his throat tighten. "This isn't just the end of a journey," he continued. "This is the start of something new. A new home, a new chapter, for all of us, and for everyone who comes after." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then someone clapped. Then another. And another. Soon the air was filled with cheers and applause. David smiled faintly, feeling a weight lift from his chest. That night, as the twin suns set and two moons rose, David stood at the edge of the camp, staring up at the stars. They looked different now. Clearer, brighter, no longer full of fear and shadows, but of possibility. He heard soft footsteps behind him. It was the captain. She handed him a small metal plate, their colony's flag, and said, "You should be the one to plant it." David hesitated, then nodded. He walked a little way from the camp, found a smooth patch of ground, and drove the flag into the earth. The metal glinted in the moonlight. He stepped back and looked at it. For a long time, the captain joined him and said quietly, "They'll tell stories about this day, about you." David shook his head, still watching the flag. "Don't tell it about me," he said softly. "Tell it about us, about humans. How we faced the dark and didn't break. How we kept going, no matter what." The captain smiled faintly. "I think they will." In the days that followed, they began to build. Tents became shelters. Shelters became homes. The wounded healed. The land bloomed, and every night, David would stand beneath the stars, watching the place where the guardian had fallen, a faint golden scar on the land, and whisper to himself, "We're still here," because they were Dot humans, Dot still standing, still fighting, still alive, Dot, and this world, their new dawn, was only the beginning, the end.